Hello and welcome everyone to the Galit Speaks podcast. I have an awesome guest today, Joey Pagano. He is a licensed social worker, therapist, professor, and certified recovery specialist with over a decade of experience in the drug and alcohol field. He's a recovering addict who's an author of 3 books, including No Addict Left Behind. It's a recovery medicine state of mind, which will release 6/6/23 in stores and online. His personal story encompasses the clinical, medical, and personal experiences of the stigma of addiction and recovery medicine in our country. Hi, Joey. Thanks for being on.
Hey, glad to be here. I just look forward to the show, Galit.
Awesome. Yeah. So I have so much to ask you. So, first of all,
hmm
what made you get into this line of work?
I believe that my struggles don't define me. They've refined me, kind of like who I am today. I would have never chose any of this. It kind of my past kind of like shaped all this and just set me into set me in motion to where I'm at now. Like social work isn't something I believe that's something that we choose as humans, right? It's something that it chose me, right? So that's kind of how I got here through those hard won experiences, and I wouldn't trade any of it.
Wow. So, were you addiction start? And did you think you were going to go on a completely different path before that happened?
Yeah, you know what? Addiction just it's kind of crazy how that happens. Addiction just starts very young, like even before the drugs. Where like the seeds of addiction were planted long before I picked up anything, and from the we just say from the trauma of being a child and growing up with the dogma that authoritarian parenting style where just things need to be done in a certain way, getting bullied throughout high school, like all this stuff kind of just set it in motion. Trying to escape in the military, just doing all these things, but like addiction was there, and addiction it just gets hold of you, and it just like it was like the evolution of my addiction, and as I grew up I used for like 21 years. I always say that in a good way to someone to conceptualize addiction, it's like hell isn't just somewhere you could possibly go. It's something that I carried around for 21 years. So it was just somewhere where I lived in those horrible places, and not happy with myself and just wanting to die, slowly committing suicide, and addiction just takes you, and I couldn't escape, Galit. I just couldn't escape, and so many times I tried to kill myself. So many times I just wish this madness would end, and I just wanted an escape. But like I said, his life it had other plans, and I survived.
Yeah. So, you mentioned you had an authoritative kind of parent.
Mhm.
And I feel like a lot of times there's a stigma around addiction, that it's
Yes.
something that it's when you grow up in a horrible situation, which in some cases it is,
hmm
but we we associate it more with people who are not wealthy, who are not educated, and that's completely not the case.
hmm
What was your childhood like?
I grew up in this family. I grew up from a good family. Okay, it was like a middle class family, but like I said, as I came up with getting I was just different in high school, right? Different in we'll just say elementary, and someone that Joey, you were reminded from your parents, like I come up where like I says I have a relationship with God and everything, but I was like it was almost like I was chastised. You need to remember it's because of God this has happened. And then so you have that whole bit. And then you have, you know, um, going to Catholic school, just all the things where it's just this dogma we have in our world. And when I think of the word dogma, I think of a rigid, unbending doctrine. You do it this way, or the other way is not right. So all that, and then I had my family, and they're just reminding me things just had to be. And when you come up with these doctrines, when you come up with this stuff where authoritarian parenting style is built on this stuff, then you have a perfect storm for addiction. You have a perfect storm for mental health disorders to develop with anybody, because as a human being, right? As a human being, I live in a dark corner where in that perfect storm, you just feel feelings of not good enough, and you know, and I don't want to glamorize addiction, but in one sense, addiction kind of kept me alive. Addiction kept me, for whatever it's worth, to not commit suicide, right? Because you have all this trauma and just feelings of low self-worth, low self-esteem, and then you're getting bullied day after day. You just want that madness to stop. So addiction kind of just numbs that pain enough to get through. Not that it's any kind of healthy coping method, right? So someone would, right, and they turn to this unhealthy coping method, and they find out where, with addiction comes a lot of consequences, comes a lot of, right? It's like trying to solve a problem by creating another problem, right? And now you have an addiction. And listen, I didn't even know I had an addiction, nor did I know what recovery was or anything of that matter. So when you don't know what addiction is, and you have this perfect storm for all this stuff happening, and you're just gripping on to any coping method, what ends up happening is, you think maybe I'm just a bad person. I don't know what's wrong with me. It's like the undiagnosed addict, right? You're just clinging on to anything. And that's what I did for decades, because I didn't know that there was a thing called, we'll say the slang words like dope sickness, right? And we know it in the clinical world as like opiate withdrawal. I never knew what that was. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just wanted the pain to numb. I wanted to get through periods of my life and just feel that I was enough, and feel like, and it's hard to feel that way in authoritarian parenting style. It's very hard. You get locked in these corners, and it's just hard to get out of them. And I'm just different. I'm the complete opposite. I'm the antithesis of my parents, right? They are, I don't want to bring, let's say, politics in it, but like, my mom's a very hard conservative, like a Bible Belt, we call them conservative. I'm a liberal, right? And that's just who I am. And there's nothing wrong with either of them. But when you have those different, like our own doctrines, and just like being who we are, you have stuff that clash. My wife and I parent my child a very authoritative way, and my parents did the opposite way. So I try, like, we're just different, and there's no better, no worse. So what I'm saying is, like, a lot, we think in the clinical world, you hear of like a cognitive dissonance. That means when I have stuff in my spirit, and in my soul, right? The stuff that I believe, and we should get, my belief system was shaped on all these ideologies. And what happens is when you go through life like that, you have stuff that just you don't agree with, and it doesn't mean it's any, once again, better or worse. It just, it's why, like, we're all different, and diversity is our strength. It's not our limitation. So all this stuff, like I said, was a perfect storm for addiction, right? It's like, what else is there? You don't even know that there's anything wrong with it, but it makes you feel well, right? It makes me feel better. And that's what I thought. I didn't understand that I was going to get dope sick, that I was going to go through opiate withdrawal if I used heroin. I didn't understand that if you numb the pain a lot, for years and years, and you're going to have unfelt feelings, that you're going to have to go through those feelings, that you're going to have to, like I says, if you don't die from an overdose and you survive all that, it's going to take a while for you to progress through, like, some of the, systems of our life, as we go through that. And like, Galit, I didn't understand any of this stuff. but I was a survivor of a catastrophe called addiction, and I was merely surviving. And like I said, as I overdosed, a million times, it felt like I wanted to kill myself every other day. And I just wanted to be okay with me. And it's hard to be okay with me when you're going through all these, you have all this storm of stuff going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what was your rock bottom?
Mm.
What turned the tide for you?
I remember, and this is after decades of using. You know, uh, this is after going in the army, getting thrown out of the army with an other than honorable discharge, receiving that, like, it was like a scarlet letter of a discharge, and not knowing you're an addict. This is after getting dropped off. It's like you're kicked out of the military, and we're going to drop you off at the interstate outside the base, and we're going to make you walk 30 miles as a 20-year-old male, and not knowing what you're doing, where you're at, what's going on, 2,000 miles away. This is after coming back to Pennsylvania and using for, like, I don't know, maybe 15 more years in pure hell. This is after failing marriages, right? Because you just want a relationship and you don't know what's wrong with you. This is after losing, not being able to see your son, abandoning your son. You'd sell anything for the next one. Addiction was king. This is after, like, story after story of degradation, not showering, not eating, burning all bridges. Nobody wanted to be with you, just wishing to die. So that kind of, like, to paint for the audience, to paint a picture on that. I The end went like this, and I woke up one day, and I was at my parents' house, which I kind of was like, I was like the terrorist in my own, in their house, right? You pretty much keep my parents hostage. And the disease of addiction was like a drill sergeant that said, like, you wake up, Joey. And I got up, and I put my clothes on, which was, I, I had like nothing at that time. I barely had any clothes, any possessions. And I said, yes, sir. Right. I just salute the disease, and I wake up, and I march for the disease of addiction. And I got to get one more, whatever that one more was. And I march out, and I didn't have any money, and I didn't know what to do, but I wanted to die. And I had, like, the left side of my brain trying to sell me an idea, and the right side trying to buy it, right? And, Joey, you can't be sick today. And I said, yes, sir. And I kept marching down the street. And I'm from a small town, 3,000 people. Everybody knows what, everybody's doing. They all know what I look like. And my iconic image of me was, like, wearing a hoodie. I wore a hoodie everywhere I go. Right. That's why I put that on the cover of my book, because it really personifies, like, the addict, who I was. And I wore that hood, and I marched down, and I didn't have any money. And the disease said, Joey, you're going to go in that gas station, and you're going to take that money, and you're going to get high, and you're not going to be sick today. And I said, yes, sir. And I just wanted to die, and I wanted to get out of there. And I went in, and I robbed a gas station, right? I left. I ran out, right? And I'm running down the street. I got high, and I kept going. I kept walking down the street, and I just wanted to die. I said, listen, this needs to be over. This needs to be the final days. I can't do it anymore. And so what I did, I sat down on the sidewalk. And it was crazy because it was right across the street from the police station. And I just sat down. And somehow I had a phone. Right? I had a phone left in the dark days of addiction. And I picked up the phone. I called my mom. And I said, Mom, I'm sorry. I failed you. This is it. I says, I'm killing myself. I can't take it anymore. Tell Dad I love him. Tell my kid, like, I can't do it. And I apologize for not being a good enough father and son and everything. I failed. And she's screaming, no. And I can't take it no more. It's going to be worse. I can't stop. And she just, I'm hanging down the phone. I'm hanging up the phone. And I remember, like, her screaming so loud as I was reaching down the phone, and I just slammed it down. And I looked down at the ground, and I just felt like just dying right there. And I remember just raising my head and sweat. I was just sweating so bad, and I was so anxious, and my stomach was in knots. And then I looked up in the air, and in the sky, and it felt like I was getting carried across the street. And I'll never forget that moment as long as I live. And I, I walked across the street somehow, and I went into the side entrance of the police station. I walked in there, and I saw the detective and the chief, and I said, listen, this is me. I did this crime, and I can't take it no more. And if I use again, like I feel this is the day before I die. And I walked in, and I didn't think I'm like crazy, right? But they seen the pain in my eyes. They seen the tears, right? And they knew. And I remember the chief just putting he's kind of like he put handcuffs, but he put his arm around me, and like, and he took me, and I knew I was able to finally the stop getting busy dying, and I was able to get busy living. And that was it, Galit, and I've been clean ever since.
Wow. So was it, did you go to jail or like, and that's where you got clean? Did they give you any kind of treatment? Did you get some therapy there? What was the process of getting clean for you?
Well, I went to jail, and I got a lesser sentence because it was, I turned myself in, and I was in there. I got sent to a drug problem, because I raised my hand, and I told the judge whenever that process was going, I can't stop using, and I just want help. And I went through that whole process of treatment and therapy, and I went through that, and spent a couple years in there, and that's what I needed, and I needed to like reflect a lot. And like I said, I got arrested the day before I was going to die, and I believe that. And I remember like going through all that process, and getting out, and I had to I got out, and I had to make a decision. Like, what was I going to do? And you get out of jail, and like the disease of addiction says, listen, like, you could do it again. Maybe you could use again. We're gonna try. We're gonna put a twist on this, and maybe you could just try something different. You listen, Joe. You could do it. And the disease of addiction is very powerful,
Yeah.
and I had to make a choice, and I decided to get busy living, and running in recovery, and I really haven't looked back. And like I said, everything was different. I got out, and I outpatient therapy again, and I got active in just being a service in my town, and I got excited about recovery. Listen, we got this. There's this nonprofit group. Okay, it's called Club Serenity Inc. And
Okay.
they were small, pretty much just like a 12-step recovery house, sorry, clubhouse at the time. So I get out, and I acquire some friends that are all in recovery, and then I found myself becoming the president of this nonprofit entity. And listen, like, I got excited, and I wanted to be a service, and I'm running around our we'll say like maybe 20,000 person community of like maybe 6 community towns at all. We're in this place called the Mon Valley. It's surrounded this river called the Monongahela River. So it was a community. And listen, I got a car, and like I get this red Dodge Dart, and I got it all decked out with the full car decals, and I had like this phoenix on it rising from the ashes like an addict, and I got these hands on the hood, and I look crazy, and I'm driving around just helping people. And like, listen, if you were using drugs in around 2013 to like 2016, I was the last person you want to see. I'm there just saving people and throwing them in my car and taking them to treatment, and just getting excited. Listen, I I learned I didn't have any kind of really college or any kind of skills like that. I didn't have any legal skills. I watched YouTube and learned how to write legal paperwork. Like, I filed our 501(c)(3) from just teaching myself how to do it on YouTube. I wrote grants from YouTube. I wrote business plans. I was filing paperwork to have a recovery house. I was visiting. Listen, my one friend Lee Roberts. I remember I had a conversation with him, and I said, "Listen, we got to make a difference. We got to do it all, and I don't know what to do." He said, "Joey, this town needs something, and you just might be the something we need." And I remember, and I went to the city council, and I just, I'm talking for addicts and at the city council. I'm advocating without being a social worker, without knowing what social work is, and I'm just speaking, and I'm taking a stand, and I'm helping to save lives, and I'm becoming like an instrument of just recovery. And I did that for several years, and running around and just making a difference, and just trying to be like a recovery soldier in the area. Like that's how it was. That's how it was, Galit. And I was just used as this person to like make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what made you take the next step into social work and becoming licensed?
Mm. It was so exciting. And just like looking back, it's just still, I couldn't even have made this stuff up. I never would have saw this stuff for myself. I couldn't even conceptualize it. It just still amazes me. I remember, so I'm driving around saving people, helping people, right? Doing all this stuff, not getting paid, all volunteer. Okay. And so I'm the president at the time, right? Steel Club Serenity. And these two ladies make an appointment with me. Cheryl Emila, right? She was at the time, she was the executive director, strategic alignment, innovation and strategic alignment for an agency, the same agency, remember, that I went to intensive outpatient therapy at for years and couldn't get clean. It's called SPHS. It stands for Southwestern Pennsylvania Human Services. Okay, right by Pittsburgh, that whole area. So, and then Rita Nichols at the time, she was the Center of Excellence supervisor. So they make an appointment. They want to just talk to me. So they come there. I really didn't know too much of what this was about. Maybe our agencies working together. I don't know. They come in. They come in my office and listen, Joey, we want you to work for us and get paid for what you're doing now. I says, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get paid. I just want to just go help. I'm just running around. I says, I want to be this recovery cowboy. I want to just save lives and just drive around and do what I can and stay excited. No, Joey, listen, we know what you're doing. And a lot of people are seeing, we've seen you in the paper, right? I was in lots of paper articles, tons of them, new, all kind of stuff. I was just being of service. Like I said, I was a recovery cowboy. You didn't need to pay me any money. I just want to be of service. Service is for those we serve. And that's how it was. And they said, no, listen, you got to work. Right. And I was just starting my associates at the time. Right. And I was kind of thinking nursing maybe, or just something medical. Right. I didn't really know, just something like I had that helping. I had that part of me that in my heart that wanted to help. But right. I didn't know what my purpose was. But like I said, sometimes doors of opportunity just continue open as we walk through them, as seasons change in our life, right? Not seasons like winter, summer, spring, fall, but like our perspective in life changes, and these doors open as we just like walk through them and just say, listen, like I agree to do something, right? And like another door opens, and this was another door being opened. And I remember fighting them in this conversation, right? I'm literally fighting someone to pay me, that wants to pay me, because I don't want to get paid and I want to work for free, right? In the real world, that makes absolute no sense. But that's where my heart was, right? And I walk out of the office and I look up at the wall, and there was a sign that I put up there. It says, expect a miracle. And I was like, dang, what is that miracle? And I realized the miracle was me. And I started to work for them. And I remember in 2017, I started to work for the same company I couldn't get clean at. And I was an intensive outpatient, right? Rehab a zillion times, and just can't get right, right? Behavioral health units, wanted to kill myself, all that stuff. So I found myself working for a thing called a Center of Excellence. And what that is a program that treats opiate use disorder clients in Pennsylvania, that was created by Governor Tom Wolf at the time because of all the opioid overdoses, right, in the opiate epidemic. So that's kind of like the reasoning. But I was doing this before, like, this program was created and brought to fruition. I was doing this for free. I was doing the same, right, the same logistical work. So I found myself walking in, Galit, and it was crazy, and like I couldn't explain, like, what I was feeling like, it was just amazing, and this was a miracle, and I was a miracle. And now I'm working at this place, and I'm going out and just trying to be of service, and I'm getting paid, and I, and the miracle just kept changing. I met some pivotal people along the way as I worked there. I met the chief medical officer of SPHS, which became my co-author in my current book, right? Dr. Scott A. Cook. He still is a very, very well-known recovery medicine physician. He did primary care. He did a lot of things. He's mostly known as the traveling doctor. He travels all around the world, and just helps and speaks and presents. But like, our belief systems parallel on so many different facets of social work as a whole, and so we got together, worked together, and like I said, we still work together, and became friends. And like Cheryl Emila, which is now the chief operating officer of SPHS, became good friends with myself, and she created that center of excellence. And so all these, and then there was the now she's the chief executive officer, Kelly McKevitt, and she was one of the most pivotal, persons in acquiring me there. And she knew like who I was. She saw me in the paper. She's a Mon Valley native. So all these members, like, they were just, kind of like divine appointments that, like, I would have never guessed. They were behind the scenes, and they saw me growing, and they knew that where I belonged, and it helped me. It's like they helped me open that door of opportunity when I wasn't strong enough to open it myself. And they you know what I mean? They were like a divine appointment. They carried me through a time in my life that I would have never got through. So I continue to work there, and I stayed in school, and I would have never. And I says, I don't know what to go through, and I changed my associate degree, and ended up getting associates of science in human services / social work. And I graduated, and it was like amazing, right? I got a degree. This is going from, I was just about to kill myself across the street. And I barely graduated high school because I didn't like school, because I didn't like myself, because I got bullied every day, right? And I had a perfect storm of degradation and dereliction in my life. But now I found myself getting a degree and staying in school, and finding out that, like, I do well in school, and I love being in school, and I love learning, and I love just being there. And I stayed in there, and I continue to get degrees. Listen, I got my associates, then I got my bachelor's of social work, and then I got my master's of social work, and then I got my licensed bachelor social work license, and I got my licensed social worker master's license, right? And like, it just kept going. I just kept staying, and right, like, these are with like 4.0. This is with writing several books. This is with, right, working there, doing well. This is with, like, finding my wife. She's in my book. It's part of, like, quit choosing and get chosen chapter. It's like, I wouldn't have chose any of this stuff, but my wife, just like my education, and just like SPHS, just like Club Serenity, just like me getting clean, this stuff chose me. Social work picked me, and I stayed, and I kept, I helped open that door of opportunity, and I walked through it. And no matter what the struggles were, I realized that my struggles did not define me. They've refined me into who I am. And I started my doctorate school. And listen, I'm on, like, I mean, I'm barely on any sleep right now. I'm just doing homework before this. And it's, I'm trying to do it ultra full time, right? I'm taking a ton of classes, and, next March I can't even believe it, Dr. Joey Pagano, right? And I would have never dreamt this. I'm now a project supervisor of the SPHS Center of Excellence, right? I'm now the whole supervisor of the same agency, corporation, that I couldn't get clean at, that I hated going to, because, like, it wanted some stuff for me that I wasn't ready to want for myself. I was ready to die, but with the disease of addiction was co-signing my every move. And I just had some kind of faith, and let people believe in me and trust people. And when the going got tough, just like this song, right? The tough got going. and when these experiences and when this collateral damage of addiction happens, right, and all these things happen, like I just got to have faith it's going to be okay. And I just kept walking through these experiences, Galit, and I found myself just continue to grow and continue to be of service. And that's, like I said, it's like that's part of where I'm at right now, and it's just amazing.
Yeah. So something that struck me while you were talking is you not wanting to be paid. Is that because you didn't feel like you were worth it? And if so, how did that change?
And I think you're partly right. I think the question like answers part of that. I always feel even up to this day, and I don't know, it's just part of me. I think just being an addict and having your own trauma, you still have your own struggles. I think a person still has their own struggles. So part of me, always I always feel that I owe. I always feel that I owe, and sometimes I'll have conversations with people, and they'll just say, "Listen, Joe, you don't owe no more. You saved hundreds of lives. You did so much." But sometimes I always feel so when I was being a service for Club Serenity, I just didn't want to get I didn't want to get paid, and I just wanted to be of service, and I couldn't conceptualize anything past that. But sometimes opportunities present themselves, and I think just as a human being, right, and not just an addict, just anybody, like when sometimes we have these opportunities in our life, and when our perspective, like our season, right, when it changes, and even though I didn't feel right, like sometimes like these doors open, and they're open for a reason, right, and I walked through that and just had some faith that just I still feel that I owe, right, I never stopped being a service. People say, like, well, how are you not quitting? Like, you just keep going. They said, nobody else does. How do you do that? I said, part of me still feels like I do. Oh, and I know I don't, but I still feel like that. And I still feel like I need to be a service and I need to help. And like I said, I was spared. I should have died so many times, but I just feel in my heart that I just need to be. I just need to be there, and maybe if I just help one person. So part of me tells me that, and another part still tells me that I owe. You know, and it just, and I think that's why I thought that part of it, Gleed. I would say, but I don't know, just being a service, it always just like filled me up, and I always know there's someone suffering, and I was always able to empathize and go back to when I felt just not good enough, and there's always someone that needs help, and maybe my heart, like, listen, like, I don't know, I'm always trying to help, and I never had, like, listen, I remember at a point growing up, I always thought like I was weak, and like I always felt different, like because I felt kind, and I felt empathetic very easily, and I thought, like, we come from that dogma, right? Those kind of, or just say those beliefs in our country where, like, some avenues that's looked at as weakness, right? Like, you don't want to look at that, but like that's who I am. I just want to help people in whatever capacity I can. I'm not saying I want to be a martyr for any of these populations, but like I want to be there for the people that can't, like I want to be there for my friends that didn't make it. In my book, I talk about getting my degree, and I remember walking up to get my master's, and just remember a conversation I had with one of my friends that he wanted a college degree, right, when I didn't even want one, and I couldn't even conceptualize that or see anything past where I was at, and he did. He saw that, but he didn't make it. He died of an overdose because he didn't stop using. And sometimes I wonder, like, why did I get spared? I used for 21 years. I used heroin a zillion times, right? I robbed a gas station. I could have been killed so many times. I tried to kill myself. All this stuff. Why didn't I die at those times? And sometimes it's just easier to like quit questioning that and trying to understand. I'll go crazy if I try to understand that. Sometimes, like in that moment, getting my degree, I just got to accept that, and I was spared for a reason, you know, and part of that is like why I feel I owe. I just want to be of service, and I just want to help people. But like I said, helping, my season changes, and I'm able to help people in just different ways. You know,
Yeah.
and that's just what happened. We all find our purpose, and sometimes our purpose changes, you know, and that's what I feel.
Yeah. So you mentioned that next you are going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
What is next for you? What do you think is your next season?
Well, here's where I felt getting led. So my wife's in school right now too. She's getting her bachelor's of social work. She'll graduate next May, and I believe I'll graduate next May, technically in March, but I think I'll have to wait till May to get my, excuse me, doctorate of social work. So technically, we'll be both social workers. So just like Dr. Cook, right? Because he's an inspiration to me, and like I says, I love him. We share so many of the same beliefs. So he has the traveling doctor, and he does that. So Jody and I formed our own business, and it's more will be revealed with that. We're the traveling social workers, right? So what I feel, where my heart spoke to me, is we love Jody and I love traveling, right? We love traveling. We love the beach. We don't go there enough, and we love helping people. We share a lot of the those characteristics. So that being said, is we created this traveling social workers, and you know I would say hopefully next year more will be revealed about this, but I just want to travel. Like I said, I love my job. I love the clinical world and everything. But, as I'm progressing in my life, um, the door that's opening, like you said, that season where I feel that I'm getting pushed into is I want to travel. I want to maybe do private practice therapy, maybe virtually throughout the world. And while I'm able to do that, I want to just travel and speak and help people. Speaking is something that, for whatever reason, I could do it, and it's just something I've been gifted with. So that being said, is I want to be able to, I've been creating trainings. I'm going to offer hopefully CEU credits. I want to travel to different rehabilitation centers, speak and give people hope in that way, all over the world. And we're going to see what happens with that. But, that's happening at the same time as my book's coming. It's actually coming out. We pushed the date up, so now it's actually coming out April 25th. So we're looking at 13 days. It's coming out. So we pushed it up. Yeah, I'm so excited. So I've been I'm doing a lot of book signings, and I want to. That's what I want to do, and maybe I've been blessed with the gift of gab and be able to speak, because that my purpose is is evolving, and it's going to be hard walking through that door. I mean, I love SPHS. I'll probably stay there in some capacity, but I never know what the future will hold. But I want to be pushed into, I just want to just trust the future, and trust where I'm going to be. Like I said, I love the center of excellence, and I don't know. I mean, will I still be there? I might still be there, in years, and maybe continue into maybe executive management at SPHS, but whatever happens in that part of my life, the traveling social workers is definitely evolving also. So whatever I'm going to do, it's just I'm going to just trust that process, and just be of service. And just like I trusted Cheryl and Rita and Kelly with Club Serenity and SPHS, I got to trust what's next for the traveling social workers, and I got to trust, and I think that's where I'm going.
That's amazing. So here's something that I feel like will be really beneficial for anyone who's listening, because I think that all of us either know someone or have struggled with addiction ourselves. What do you think? What is the best advice that you can give someone who's worried about a friend, a family member that they believe is going through addiction?
Oh wow! And I speak a lot about this in my book. And like I said, recovery is individualized. And like I said, I would never claim to know what's best for everyone. And I make sure I put that as a statement in my book. I'm a clinician, and I have a lot of experience, and I'm an addiction, or I'm a recovering addict that suffered from addiction, right? So just because I have all that, I still don't know what's best for everyone. But what I can say is I offer solutions which can apply if they're right. They can apply to a person if that person is going through whatever modality of care that can they could have. So, for example, one, just don't give up. And just like my mom, speaks in the book about that. It's just sometimes you got to discern. And when you think of discernment, sometimes you have to love people from great distances. So it's about no addict left behind, Delete. It's about don't give up on someone no matter what. And just continue to love them through their process. I got clean like, I don't even know how many times, 25, 26 times, right? If they had given up on me the time before that, I wouldn't be here. But my mother had to learn to love me from far away. And she had to tell me no. And she had to understand that no was a complete sentence. And she had to create boundaries, right? Because people become like toxic, like spiritual vampires. They'll like suck the love right out of you, and you'll enable them, right? Because I did this. My mom did this to me, right? And I did this to people, because I tried, but I forgot. Like, listen, I gotta have. You have to have boundaries, and I have to. I'm sorry, but you're not getting any money off me, and I'm not going to give up on you. But I'll help you get into treatment if you're willing to go, right? And like those are the things that like people had to do to me, right? When you overdose, like if I'm not ready to get clean, then my mother couldn't say the right thing to me. But if I was ready to get clean, then she couldn't say the wrong thing to me. So, in other words, is all you could do is just tell someone you love them and help them if they're willing. If they're willing, like people had to meet me halfway. So what I would say is maybe that can apply if someone else is suffering to someone else. Once again, I don't know the cookie cutter. There is no cookie cutter process to recovery. There's just loving them, try not to enable them, right? Work for me. And like I said, is I had to go to jail, right? That's what what I mean. That's what I had to. I'm not saying someone else has to happen, but I overdosed a million times, and like I says, and I abandoned my son, I abandoned marriages. Like that stuff's not powerful enough to stay clean. I'm sorry, it isn't. Maybe for some people, but once again, it goes back to like recovery is so individualized. Is love someone, love them from a distance, if you have to, but don't give up on them and meet them halfway. And those are the things that work for me.
Yeah. Wow, that's really powerful, and I know that that's with so many things. Like you can't help someone if they're not ready to be helped.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really powerful message, though, because we're taught. I feel like to there's this kind of an idea of you got to get away from the toxicity and you have to kind of leave them to their own devices. And what you're saying is that that's true in some instance, but you still have to be there when they're ready
Yeah.
and not completely close that door. And I feel like that has some similarity to what I've done in my life. I'm a domestic violence survivor, and I've had family members who have entered into domestic violence situations themselves.
Mm.
And it's kind of the approach that I've been taking with them of I'm here. I do not condone this. I can't be a part of it. But when you're ready, I'm going to help you.
That's it. That's it. It's so hard with domestic violence, and I can totally identify because you know it's sometimes it's even harder because the thing is like they have to I want to help someone that's going through that, and it's like you have to call the domestic violence shelter. I can't call for you, and people want you to do that, but you can't. When you deal with that, the seriousness of that, and that's how that goes, and it's just tough, and the person's like getting hurt daily, but you know how it's so hard. It's so hard. Some people just don't. They're not ready. But that is so close to addiction. It's the same thing. If you're not ready, to turn that person in, then I can't say the right thing to you. You know what I mean? Oh,
And I totally think that it is being addicted
yes, yes.
to, it, like you said, it's this the hell that you carry with you,
Mm, yeah,
right? And sometimes that hell is really comfortable
yes.
and you sit in it.
Mm,
Um, and until that hell is so uncomfortable that you have to get out of it, like that's going to be your life.
that's it, Galit. Distorted comfortability in familiar pain.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just addiction 101, you know. It's a shame, but that's kind of like the monsters we live in, you know, and they just, the toxicity of those addictions just, but there's, like I said, there's ways out, and not everybody gets out. You
Yeah.
know, I could have easily just made one decision, when I was sitting on that curb, and if I'd have made that different, I wouldn't be here. But for whatever reason, like I made a different decision, and I was able to live, and like I said, I didn't have to go to school and all that, but I just believe that. Listen, I everything I made is just to better someone else. I got
Yeah.
a governor's pardon, right? Like I might have got those criminal charges, but then I applied for a governor's pardon, and years later, right, I have no record. I don't have anything. I was pardoned by the governor. I mean, I'm in the middle of a discharge upgrade with the military, and like I said, my life just goes on and on and on and on, you know, just but it's just like just showing up and walking through those fears and believing that there's light at the end of the tunnel, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's substance addiction, whatever it is. Like it's hard going through that, but if you do, like there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there is hope. I mean,
I
without hope.
really, yeah, I really love that you said that you applied and got a pardon,
Mm,
because that in itself I think is something so inspirational. Like, yeah, you can make a mistake
yes.
and still not be affected by it the rest of your life, because we sometimes think about like,
Mm,
oh, this is a point of no return. And yeah, there are moments like that in our lives, but there are also ways that you can come back from almost everything. And even if you can't necessarily take it away, you can uh, kind of give, like you said, you owe something, right?
yes.
You can give back until the scales are made somewhat even.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why I keep chasing that. And hopefully one day I feel that they're even. But I'm gonna, until then, I want to just keep serving. And like I said, some days I'm serving my family, right? Some days I'm just being there for my daughter, and letting her be autonomous in her decisions. And I told you, like, we're very authoritative, right? We try to meet my daughter, my son, where they're at, right? And then we try to let them express, and and just show them it's okay to just tell us if they're struggling. Like if everybody's, all the kids are smoking weed, they're vape pens and all that stuff is right. She's 14. That's everywhere now. And I try to express that, like, welcoming environment in our household. So, right. And addiction's like real, right. At 14 today, it's crazy. Kids, and I want her to, like, no, like if your friends are doing something, just learn from Jody and I, my wife and I, right? And it's those same principles, yeah, right, of domestic violence, of addiction, of all that stuff, where they feel that, like, they're locked in a corner, or they can't get out, and they get codependent, right? That was just me, like codependent on a drug, whatever you're codependent of, right? I want her to feel that no matter what's the issue, no matter what the issue is, she could come to us. And I think we, for the most part, we got that. I can't stop her to use drugs. No one was able to stop me, right? I come from a family that was, like, very authoritarian, and you would think, right, middle class, right? It's fine, right? Not my son, not my son, right? But the truth of the matter is addiction, just like everything else in this world, doesn't discriminate, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It doesn't matter who you are, a movie star, wherever you come from, the lowest of socioeconomic levels. It doesn't matter. right? Bullying and all that stuff's real. Now it's even more advanced now, right? My daughter has to deal with cyberbullying, stuff that we didn't have to deal with, and now they have to deal with that. And you wonder why all this stuff in our world is crazy. You know what I mean? Because now stuff has progressed. So now like addiction is like it's not like starting at 17, 18, like it's starting at like 12, 13, right? Even younger. You see this and all this stuff is happening. So that's what we try to do, Jody and I. And we try to just, bring that welcoming attitude into our family.
Yeah. So we're coming up on an hour, so I kind of want to talk a little bit about the books that you have and the different things that you have going on next.
Okay.
So you said you're an author of 3 books.
Yes. Yes.
And where can we find them? What are they called?
Okay. Well, the first book I've written is called "When My Heart Speaks, I Listen" by Joey Pagano. It was more just like a little reflection book. It's on Amazon now. Um, I'm getting ready. I might take it out of print for a minute and just change some things. I'm not sure, but you can get it on Amazon right now. It was my first book. I self-published it. Listen, I sponsored this guy in my program, and I was I was writing on Facebook all the time, and I couldn't see myself as a writer. And he says, "Man, you should write a book." I said, "What do you mean write a book? I can't write that well." He said, "You write pretty decent." I said, "How do you know?" He said, "Listen, I'm retired now." He's an older gentleman, and I was an English professor. It's the same college I'm at. I was at, right, when I got my associate. So I wrote that book, and I did it. And it was only, I think it was maybe 70 pages, and my writing skills, it progressed. So that was the first one. The second one was more a little bit more advanced. It was called "One More and Not Enough: Inside the Mind of an Addict." So tells part of my story, just some little insight of some thinking of an addict. And that's on Amazon. And it also, that was just like a continuation of the first book, just a little longer. And so the next one was several years later, and that's getting released on April 25th. So how that came to fruition, about it was like 3 in the morning, and last year I was taking a shower, and I closed my eyes, and I had a thought, and I woke them back up. I said, "Huh." I said, "I need to write a book, and it needs to talk about not giving up on someone no matter what." But remember, like the themes we talked about prior in this show was like sometimes we don't want to give up on someone, but sometimes we have to love them from a distance, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's about, no addict left behind. And as I got out of that shower, I dictated this to Dr. Cook. I said, "Listen, we got to write this book." And I'm just dictated this whole thing to him in Messenger. And we called it "It's a Recovery Medicine State of Mind," kind of like a spinoff of we like some rap, Jay-Z, Empire State of Mind. So we named it that, and it kind of rhymed, and if it made sense and identified with our story. And it's not an autobiography of myself. What it is it's definitely, it shares a lot of my experiences, and it tries to help people apply to these situations if it fits them. It has me in there. It has my mother talking in the first person about like the overdose. There's some very emotional parts. My son, my sister, my brother, all kind of different situations. The stigma, like it rips. I mean, a whole a whole new level of stigma. It's into our nation. Like what's going on? The stigma, what really happens in the ER. The stigma, what really happens in the professional sense of first responders. Like all that stuff, and it just gives these tangible experiences. If you're an addict, if you're a parent of an addict, if you're that professional, like what really is happening in our world. And then Dr. Cook speaks, and we go into a chapter about solutions. Once again, I don't have the solution to recovery. I don't know it all or anything. We just split that chapter up into family, social work, family, and medical solutions, and we talk about how it's individualized, and there's many paths, and yet we don't endorse any specific path. Um, if, like I said, it's just to love people through however they need to recover, and don't stigmatize them while they're recovering, and don't worry about the dogma, the doctrine, which just because you think this is right. My dad used to say, why can't you just clean today? And I says, or why can't you just quit? Well, if I could just quit, I wouldn't be in recovery. And like I says, that those thinkings or those themes, right, are keep us into the dark corners where an addict lives. So I talk about those dark corners, and I talk about the stigma, the dogma of our nation, in all those areas. I talk about the different methods of recovery. I talk about when harm reduction is all we have. We meet people where they're at. I talk about no veteran left behind. Right? It's no parent left behind, no child left behind. So those populations can see what really happens when you have these perfect storms of addiction, mental health, stigma, and all this stuff combined. And so I talk about all that. So Dr. Cook and I, we wrote that. I want to just help people, and that's where, like, the season of my life that I'm in, and it's being released, everywhere. Well, Amazon online, and then soon to be to bookstores, but you can get it on Amazon.com on April 25th.
That's awesome. And how can people reach out to you if they want to work with you, or in your oncoming upcoming business, or do you work with people individually on
Yes.
it?
Yes. Like I said, as I'm preparing to travel to speak around the world, I offer, like I said, private one-on-one therapy virtually, anywhere in the world. Like I said, that's coming. That's a traveling social worker. You could find me on my website, which is called noaddictleftbehind.life. And you could book me from speaking on there. I could travel and do that, whether you work at an agency, like I said, a conference, maybe there's anything of that capacity. I'm working on doing CEU trainings on stigma, harm reduction, things like that, social worky stuff. And also, you could find me on all the social media sites. Joey Pagano, Instagram, Grateful Clean, Facebook, No Addict Left Behind. I'm on all of them. So you'll find me whether it's Joey Pagano or No Addict Left Behind, or whether it's the traveling social workers. And you can book me for all that. So yeah, you could. I mean, the best place is Facebook Messenger, and so I'm on all those little sites.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Joey, and sharing your story. It's super inspirational, and I really hope that this finds its way to someone who needs to hear it.
Me too. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And if you want to hear more, please reach out to Joey. If you're watching this on YouTube, please share, like, subscribe, do all the things. Make sure that this gets out, and make sure that it gets to the person that needs to hear it, because you can change somebody's life completely. Have a great night, and I will see you all next week for another episode. Bye.
Thank you.